The whole concept is, I know it's not video, not film, but it's communication. It's mass media, and radio, I think, has a lot of potential for people that are concerned about communication in the media relative to wildlife topics and science topics. From my standpoint, I don't care if it's newspaper, magazines, radio, television, anything in the mass media that has to do with wildlife what's going on is very, very crucial. I see a lot of the waterfront not being covered, or like was evident in the last hour when we were talking about the fact that a lot of the things that are being recorded now are not being recorded permanently, and that we're up for losing a lot of very valuable information, whether you're talking classroom information or documented science or whatever. But there's some trends, I think, that are not rather dangerous sounding and maybe detrimental in terms of media. That radio could help on. I think radio can reach a lot of people that other people aren't reaching, just like magazines will reach a different kind of public, and newspapers do, and television does. But wild radio, I think, faces a lot of the same challenges and offers, I think, a lot of opportunity. Somebody who is in media production and video, say, could also be doing radio. I think there's a lot to be learned. I think there's a lot of knowledge that can be shared. I think there's a lot of techniques that could be tested in radio. And if you've all picked up a copy of that, the workshop outline back there, anyhow, we had a lot of good discussions last year. We came up with a lot of good ideas, but nothing happened. There wasn't really any follow-up that I know of. But still, the potential is here. The challenges are here. In this region, there's a lot of people, I think, that could be involved with radio production of wildlife stuff. I think there's some tremendous commercial opportunities out there, business opportunities, strictly from the standpoint of the wildlife. I think there's a great need for more and better communication on wildlife, and if radio can provide it, fine. I think in terms of television, I think there's a lot of things that could be tried out and tested by using radio. What are the markets, and how do you reach certain markets and such? You could try it out a lot cheaper with radio productions and with video productions, and so anyhow, we have the potential for doing things in this workshop. We have the potential for doing things with people that are involved with wildlife and media that are in this room. I think there's a lot of that could be done right in this area. I think we need to start pulling it together and listing the possibilities and then working at the possibilities. And I can see that happening in the next year. There's several people that are quite interested in making things happen and in terms of wild radio.
About a month ago, during one of our intermittent warm spells, a friend and I were walking around Lee Metcalf National Wildlife Refuge when we noticed a large ant mound made of wood chips and debris. When we looked more closely, we observed that ants were crawling around, gathering seeds and twigs. I wondered how ants could be active so soon after the extremely low temperatures we had experienced recently. How have insects, like ants, adapted to deal with the winter cold? What keeps them from freezing into little pieces of ice? Insects have several behavioral, physiological, and biochemical mechanisms for coping with the cold. Insects found in temperate regions, such as western Montana, can generally be divided into two groups based on their ability to survive cold temperatures. In the first group are insects that can survive even if their body fluids freeze. In the second group are insects that will die if this happens. Certain flies, wasps, beetles, and the larvae and pupae of some moths and butterflies can survive when their body fluids freeze. These insects produce chemicals which control the rate and size of ice crystal formation in their bodies, thus preventing cell damage during the freezing process. Once frozen, some of these insects are capable of surviving extremely low temperatures. For example, the pupae of one species of swallowtail butterfly has survived laboratory temperatures as low as minus 385 degrees Fahrenheit.
Your imagination is part of what you listen to. You are investing and working toward creating this experience of listening to these stories on radio. And I think we learn more in many ways by listening than we do by seeing. And television to me is something that is presented to you, and you're a passive observer in many ways. Radio, you're an active participant, and I think like when we have our field notes for kids, when school children do their own investigation and their own research and write their own little scripts and come to the radio station and present them to other children listening to the radio. That's something that is very possible and very inexpensive to do, but is a meaningful experience for everybody. And it just wouldn't happen on television without a great deal of time, money, and professional staff. It's a very handy way of getting information to people, and in many ways more meaningful than just to see the latest flick on Discovery Channel. Whether it's a commercially viable thing to do, I haven't been in commercial radio for 20-some years, so non-commercial radio is very open to this sort of thing, whether it can be commercially packaged to fit in between the latest rock things, I don't know.
Well, I think even with public radio, it's not commercial in the sense, but you need to get sponsors and you need to get a budget and you need to get paid. So I think that speaks for itself. You're there, somebody wants it. But Bo Larson probably could talk about commercial possibilities better than any of us, I think. And before he falls asleep, I'd like to have Bo talk a little bit.
Well, with radio, really the sky's the limit. You can do anything you want with radio, which has been shown. Rush Limbaugh got a good head start with that. National Public Radio is an excellent, in a sense, commercial means of distributing information, because there are, in a sense, sponsors out there, as you know, locally but also nationally, to underwrite the program. And there's a lot of companies, especially major corporations, that aren't so consumer-driven per se, like pharmaceutical companies. They can't necessarily push their brand because it's prescription, but they can underwrite programs. This is done many times in medical television series and also in national radio formats. A wildlife radio type of program, as far as like a talk show or longer format, really the only place it could work is on National Public Radio, locally or nationally. It can be syndicated. It could be a local show that's syndicated over the NPR system, where the local NPR affiliates can decide to pick it up and place it. It could even be placed as a live program, though that's very difficult because getting any live program syndicated is very difficult, because you have to convince a radio station or hit that radio station at the proper time to move the programming they have for the time you want to carry your show. And that's the same problem with doing a commercial long format program. Unless you are a major name that a station would say, yes, we want that, we'll move, we'll make movements here. And 1996 is a real bad year to start something like that, because of being a political season. AM talk radio, they're looking for politics. They're not looking for anything that maybe people really want. They're looking what they think people want, which is politics or even agenda-driven type programs. So the longer format program on a National Public Radio type format is very feasible to distribute commercially. It would probably have to be a tape delay type program, and it has to have a little bit of style in the sense that why would even a local affiliate NPR want to pick it up? Yes, in Montana, everyone's much more aware, but let's say, what about in Ohio or Iowa or someplace in the Midwest or South or even the East? What is touching the pulse there that would have a station want to pick it up? It's not uncommon to distribute shorter format programs on National Public Radio, but you're still only going to hit 30 to 45 markets with it. To make it viable for an advertiser, which is really what you're getting with underwriting, you have to hit much more. You have to be national. And because their media buying department who makes the decision, it's not the top person saying, yes, I love this, let's do it. Their advertising department, who's paid millions of dollars, says, this doesn't make sense, you're wasting your money. And because it will cost money to do whatever program you do. Another format, though, the shorter programs, be it 1 minute, 2 minutes, or even 5 minutes, has a much more possibilities for distribution on NPR as one aspect with underwriting support, but also with advertising support with the natural food industry, even exercise equipment, outdoor wear companies, and things like that. And there's several different ways it can be distributed. One, directly to the stations, which is very time consuming. You get turned down 100 times before you have one that says, yeah, we want it. Many of them will take it for free. Some may buy a short program, and you have an agreement such as Paul Harvey works. You run his program as is, which includes his national sponsor the first hour. The second time it plays, you can take out the commercials and put in your own local spots. And so that type of format could work. Another method, though, that really is the most successful if you're looking for reach is a controlled purchase and also controlled distribution of a program. And how this works is, what I do is I buy time on 50,000 watt stations at night when they're very clear channel, and I reach almost 45 states just on 6 stations with short programs. These are 2 minutes in length. Basically 1 minute of health information and then 1 minute of national sponsor. The profit margin, of course, isn't there because you have to use the money they give you to place on these stations, but you can ask for more because you're reaching so much more. And it's not that expensive. I can reach, for about $700, I'm reaching those 45 states. Now, am I at the prime time to have all the listeners in the world that I want? Perhaps not. In the world, in any radio, you have to, you're honest, yet you're also deceitful. You say, I have so many stations, but you can't always guarantee all the people that are listening. Radio's like that. You're hitting, you have drive time, and you can say, oh, there's 8,000 people listening to this station, 60,000 listening to this one, but you don't know exactly when it's airing. And so that is one of the problems with commercial radio, yet you can distribute it that way. I feel, in my short history of doing commercial radio, one of the most solid ways to distribute, I feel, would be a national public radio type of format program, be it longer format, but also have an offshoot that can be commercialized. Because there's an audience out there. Shorter programs have the attention span. That's one of the successes of short programs, is that people realize, hey, this isn't a commercial, so they're instantly grabbed by it. They're listening to that first 15, 20 seconds of hook of what is this, or did you know, and then it goes to the commercial, but yet they want to stick around because they want to know what's the answer to that first part. The same type of format would work very well in an environmental or wildlife type of program. Also, on a commercialized type of program, the production values would need to be, I hate to say upgraded, but in a sense it has to be brought to the level that the consumer is used to. Consumers are getting very sophisticated in things and what they want to hear. For example, just talk, a dead air behind no music, maybe no natural sound behind it, can turn some people off on a commercial radio. They're not used to it. They're driven by music in many ways, or they're driven by high production standards of a program. National Public Radio, on the other hand, that's a format that is a standard. Though music and even natural sounds, I heard some programs here with some natural sounds that were fascinating, that just keeps bringing you in. It brings the visual into your mind, and that's part of the hook too. So to make any program successful, one, it has to be good, and two, you have to find a friend in a sponsor to get it off the ground. And there are companies out there. There's companies that would love to take the lead in something like this, yet they don't know it yet. They have to be convinced. But the thing is, we're entering that time. We're entering, I've been saying for a while, a new era of the 60s where we're hitting that cycle again, becoming much more aware of the environment and wildlife because we're losing so much of it. And we're in jeopardy with our government of losing even more. And so I think right now is an excellent time to start pushing this. And this is what I was talking with Chuck last year. I said, now's the time to make a movement on this, not only to get the word out, but to also use it as a fundraiser. These types of programs can be used to make a profit for the International Wildlife Film Festival or other organizations, and companies would want to be associated with that because of what it stands for and represents.
And even though I'm based in Los Angeles, my program has aired around the world, internationally, and between the radio and TV stations, about 125 stations nationwide. Environmental Directions is my radio program. It's the longest running environmental program in the country. There must be something about the 19th year. This is the 19th year of the International Wildlife Film Festival, and I've been doing environmental directions for 19 years. So it's a very significant number, I suppose. I was 17 years on the #1 commercial station in Southern California. Los Angeles and New York are the two biggest markets in the country. And it was most peculiar because people would come to the station and they said, "What, you're on this station? They're playing hip-hop music." I mean, first it was a rock station, then they went to hip-hop, you know, and the rap music. And they're doing Environmental Directions radio series. It was most peculiar. Nobody could figure it out. And I guess eventually they thought that it was peculiar too, because after 17 years on KPWR, they said, well, our audience doesn't care about the environment anymore. So off I went, and I had to go find another station in Los Angeles. Now I'm on Personal Achievement Radio. I guess they feel that we can personally achieve a better, healthier personality if we have a better, healthier environment. Of course, I agree with them. I'm also, everybody thought that, well, I should be on a listener-sponsored station. One of the Pacifica stations in Los Angeles is KPFK. So since everybody said, well, I should always be over there, when I first submitted my program to KPFK, they said it was too professional, even though I hadn't edited a word. I'd just done my homework and had good guests, and we did good programming. They eventually decided, well, I can do some shows there. So now I'm doing other programs like Feminist Magazine radio show, which everybody thinks is weird because they visualize me as an environmentalist. But, you know, we're all interested in lots of causes. So I do a lot of different programming. The radio program is on environment, on wildlife, can be on any kind of station. I have and currently air on the #2 commercial station, a CBS affiliate out of Chicago. I've aired on the Hoopa Indian Reservation in Northern California. Everybody, of course, thinks the Native American stations. I've aired on CKON and out of the Mohawk Nation. I've aired on NPR stations out of Tennessee, out of WUOT. I air on university stations, listener-sponsored, commercial, and everything in between. And that's the message. I air on every kind of format, classical, rock, hip-hop, and of course I haven't listened to all the stations because I can't travel to every place that my show airs, but it doesn't matter. The audience is there regardless. But we also need to have good guests, and one of the points that I want to bring up is to encourage you to participate in the radio format. How many of you, out of curiosity, have been a guest on a radio program? not as many as we should have seen every hand go up, of course. And by the time the program's over, you all are going to be empowered. At least I'm going to empower you to be a guest. And so often people think, well, I'm not the expert. Somebody else over there is the expert. Well, that's not true. Even if you only know one fact about that one species, nobody out there in your audience is going to know that you don't know anything else. You present that one fact. When I started being a guest on a radio program, I was very uncomfortable. I didn't think didn't have my PhD, and I thought, well, obviously I shouldn't be the expert. But nobody knew that when I said that there were 5 species a day becoming extinct, that that's the only fact that I happened to know about species at the time. So what you do know, communicate, because somebody has to do it. Nobody else is out there. The radio medium is a very strong medium. Commercials, companies produce commercials. Companies hire PR firms. What do the PR firms do? They try and get their people booked. What are the publishers doing? I get a call practically every day from a publicist for an author to be placed on a radio program, to be placed on my TV show. They know that that's a strong medium. Look at your films and your movies out there. Even famous name actors and actresses go around on the talk show circuit, on radio, on TV. Because if people don't hear about you or read about you, they're not going to see your film. They're not going to read your book. So the medium is there. I happen to have a little publication I do called the Compendium Newsletter. I've got some samples out in the back. Because even when viewers or listeners watch or listen to my programs, they always want some more information. So I found that it's handy to put a little something down in paper, and I try and have a very activist-oriented publication because they don't want a philosophical research paper to read. So I want them to know how and where they can take action, and that's kind of the purpose of my newsletter. But in there, I happened to do an article this issue, as apropos of knowing I was coming here, about utilizing the radio medium and the broadcast medium, and I indicated that you should find charismatic spokespeople, but even if you can't find a charismatic spokesperson, go ahead and be a guest anyway. Speak in sound bites, then elaborate. Make easy to understand emotional as well as logical arguments. You see, that's where you don't need always just your facts and figures. You can educate the reporters, provide them with what you want to talk about. People often say, well, what are your questions going to be? And I said, I can't read your mind. You tell me. You tell me what you're an expert in. I want an interview that makes you sound good. It makes me sound better. It's a better interview for everybody. So you provide the information. You provide the list of questions. You provide the list of facts and figures that you want to cover. And the host will generally be absolutely delighted that you've done their research for them. And you'll have a better interview, and you'll know what the questions are. So there are some suggestions and ideas regarding being a guest on the radio. I would encourage you to do so. How many of you have heard of Baruti Goldakov? Just a couple. How many of you have heard of, well, of course, last night, we have all heard of Jane Goodall now, right? How many of you before last night heard of Jane Goodall? Okay, you know Jane Goodall and chimpanzees. How many of you had heard of Dian Fossey? Real. Okay, Leakey sent out 3 ladies. Chimpanzees, Jane, Dian gorillas. Baruti went off to Borneo to study the orangutans. Takes a lot longer because they are more solitary type of animal than the others to do the research of them. Why have we heard of Dian and why have we heard of Jane, but we haven't heard of Baruti? Because the films and the documentaries and the talk shows have interviewed these people, had programs about them, they've gotten the coverage. You can become known by getting out there. Baruti is in her 25th year. She's finished her book, Reflections of Eden, and hopefully somebody will make a movie of it. I'm going to be doing a TV show and some more radio interviews with her. But that's the case with whatever issue you're working on, with whatever species you're working with. You can get the word out and get people familiar with hearing that name, hearing that species, and doing something about it.
The International Wildlife Film Festival showcases the best in wildlife films. Every year, filmmakers from around the world send their latest works to Missoula, Montana to be judged for scientific accuracy, artistic values, and production excellence.
The International Wildlife Film Festival is a unique international event created and based entirely in Missoula. The festival is the longest running of its kind in the world and attracts nearly 10,000 visitors to downtown Missoula every spring.
Our mission is simple: to monitor and improve wildlife films through intense juried competition and awards.
Community involvement and educational outreach are unique to the International Wildlife Film Festival. The Wild Walk Parade and Children's Day celebration in Caras Park kick off the week-long festival, which brings thousands of people together each year to develop and teach about wildlife and environmental ethics. Missoula's rural setting in western Montana gives us a relaxed view of the world's problems and yet focuses on local issues. The International Wildlife Film Festival is an important catalyst in setting film standards and encouraging change.
Wildlife and habitat everywhere are increasingly endangered. Excellent wildlife films help promote understanding and protect the wildlife that surrounds us.
The International Wildlife Film Festival operates year-round as a nonprofit organization dedicated to the enhancement of our natural world through understanding and education. We rely primarily on volunteer staff and community involvement. The festival has grown beyond all expectations. Our film, video, and written archives are a major education and teaching resource. Your support is crucial to our continued success in meeting our mission.